Fire Emblem Three Houses is a story-driven, single-player, turn-based RPG, and it's my first experience with the series outside of the Smash Bros. Games. I have to say, it was a phenomenal one. I loved the extensive world of Fodlan, the engaging combat, and the catchy soundtrack. But what really made me adore this game was the expansive list of characters and the incredible depth of the characters in this game. There were so many characters in this game, I didn't even hear everyone's story on my first playthrough. I also want to limit spoilers for a lot of this video, so if you want to go in completely blind to this game, skip here to see my final thoughts on the game at the end of this video. For the rest of you still here, Three Houses introduces you to the most pivotal characters right out of the gate. You should be seeing them on screen now. They're Dimitri, Claude, and the penultimate of bad bitches and good girls, Edelgard von Hresvelg. These three, of course, are the leaders of the Three Houses, the Blue Lions for Dimitri, the Golden Deer for Claude, and the Black Eagles for Edelgard. They were attacked by bandits nearby your mercenary encampment, and you and your father rushed to their aid. Shortly after meeting these three, you begin to understand how the world functions. There is a mixture of Imperial, which are the Adrestians, and Edelgard's family, the Monarch in the Kingdom of Farias, which is Dimitri's family, and the Democratic Alliance of the Leicesters, which is Claude's family. Soon after meeting them, it becomes pretty clear how important these three are. Besides them being on the cover art of the game, Edelgard is heir to the throne of the empire that she comes from, Dimitri is heir of the Kingdom of Farias, and Claude is the heir to the house that leads the Leicester Alliance too. These are some big-time nobles. After fighting off the bandits with your three noble friends and your father, Geralt, knights tasked with defending the nobles arrive, in which you find out that these nobles are also students at a nearby monastery. This clues you in on the fact that there might be a tight religion that binds the land together. Your father recognizes one of the knights, and the knight does too. His name is Alois. That clues you in on that maybe your father used to be a knight, and maybe he used to work in the monastery. After some pestering from Alois, your father agrees to return to the monastery with the noble students and with you. Here's probably a good time to mention an important gameplay mechanic. You can rewind time. During the fight with the bandits, you protect Edelgard at the cost of your life, but just before you are struck, a voice called to you. A green-haired child living inside your head has the power to reverse time. At first, it's not really explained or questioned by the player, so green-haired girlie rewinds time, and instead of giving your body as a shield to Edelgard, you deflect the hit this time, protecting you both. On the basis of this heroic deed, upon arriving to the monastery, you are quickly appointed as the next professor of the monastery by the church's leader, Lady Rhea. You saw her in the intro, another addition to the list of green-haired waifus. It comes as a shock to most people how Rhea was so insistent on letting you become the teacher so easily, but in the end, everyone trusts her judgment. I mean, come on, she is the head of, a massive religion and all. This leads into the most important element of the game. Being the professor allows you to choose your students alongside the two other professors, Manuela and Hanneman. This is where you decide between the Blue Lions, the Golden Deer, or the Black Eagles. And if it hasn't been incredibly clear, I chose the Black Eagles. Each house has their own students with their own unique personalities, and each of them are incredibly lovable. Later down the line, you can also recruit students and other fighters into your house, but unfortunately, due to unforeseen waifu obsession, I was distracted and did not take the proper advantage of this. Either way, whoever you bring into your house affects the story in a minor but a permanent way, so recruiting is invaluable to a fulfilling playthrough. Teaching your students is the meat of the game. Leveling up their skills, continuing to make them motivated to fight and learn, getting to know them as people, and promoting them into a higher class of fighting is where you're going to spend a majority of the hours in this game. The dialogue features branching choices, which normally I dislike, however in this game, it felt important that people like me, so I don't mind it all that much. The only downside is that some of the animations in the game become stale or overused or just plain drab, and that's really only in the minor scenes though, and the support scenes, but it wasn't anything drastic to the point where it detracted from my overall experience with the game. Aside from teaching, there are days your character has off each month, and you can use those days to interact with the world and your students, fight battles, rest until the next week, or participate in the seminars. The most lackluster of these choices is definitely resting in the seminars. Late game I found myself not using it at all and barely using it early game. Also, I probably rested about twice in my entire playthrough. It's really only useful to heal a very powerful sword. However, you can heal that sword by conventional means at the blacksmith. I feel like a workaround for this could have been like maybe your entire class attends the seminars, and maybe resting fills your motivation to 100% instead of just 50%, but that's just me. Interacting with and increasing the motivation on your students allows them to become better learners on your teaching days. I found that to be the most efficient thing to do on the days off, and you'll see as in most of the player base as you connect online. Also, romance. Depending on the sex of your character, you have a plethora of romance options in the game. The downside is that you can only pick one spouse by the final act, and because I cared so much about the characters, I wanted to marry like 5 of them. That's just in my house. But I decided that after some careful thinking, that Edelgard is the wife for me. And that game also has incredible still shots at like the important moments, but I'll throw some of them on screen right now without context, so there's that too. I loved him, honestly. Now it's time to talk about the turn-based fighting in this game. And this was something I was also just genuinely surprised by how good it was. Especially on classic mode, where characters that are killed in battles stay dead for good, I was spending upwards of 2 to 3 hours on single battles trying to keep everyone alive. Also using my rewind time ability many times, which you can only use a certain amount of times per battle, but you can upgrade these uses as the game goes on. But like early game, you really gotta watch yourself. The different classes you can teach to your students, as well as some of the hidden ones, are very powerful in battle, and this only becomes more apparent as you improve them and level up your students to mastery. By the end of the game, I kept alive all of my students, including the recruits on Classic. I adored all of them enough that it made me want to do that. And that's saying something. A game that makes me care about the characters on a completely individual level is a game that I love, and I love this game. In my house, I married Edelgard, like I said, and recruited and taught Mercedes, Manuela, Shamir, and Sylvain. Dorothea, Caspar, Petra, Ferdinand, Bernadetta, Hubert, and Linhart all came with the Black Eagles, as you saw in the intro. I also had some tears to shed when everything was over. I know there's supposed to be DLC and all that, but I was just genuinely happy that the characters I raised grew into something great. This is emphasized by New Game Plus. After you beat the game, you can replay it while carrying over some things and being able to buy back some other things, making the grind of the first playthrough a lot more forgiving and allowing for completionists to max out stats or classes or whatever. So another good look into the perspective of why I cared so much about the game is like, okay, so quick major spoiler warning ahead. So like, if you want to play the game after hearing everything I've said already, then skip ahead again. I'll put the timestamp up and you can skip that. But anybody who played the game, you know this already, so here I go. So when Edelgard told me her story of how she was in a line of 11 siblings to take the seat of the Empire, she explained how all of them died or went insane during crest experiments performed by the villains of the game. Crests are essentially magic powers awarded at birth, but of all of her siblings, she emerged as the only remaining child, now having a crest of flames, the most powerful and the rarest crest in the game's lore. So powerful, the strain of the crest being in her turned her hair from brown to white. The tragedy motivated her to want to tear down the system of nobility based on crests, despite being a noble with a crest herself. I couldn't help but sympathize and want to take her side on everything after that. And there's this level of depth not only between you and the other main characters, but all of your students. Like even the students interacting with each other have deep consequences, and you get to know their demons as well as their passions, and it's an incredible leap in the direction of character that I just haven't really seen in storytelling, and it's absolutely only made possible through the medium of gaming. Also, just a quick note, the soundtrack isn't spectacular, but I think it's super catchy and fun, but also like it sticks to the tone in the game when it needs to, like at dark moments or death or anything like that. Normally I'm not one to pay attention to the soundtrack of a game, but I thoroughly enjoyed this one enough to feel like it needed to be mentioned here. Also, it's what's been playing at the entirety in the background of this video too, so if you like this, it's the soundtrack of the game and you'll like the game too. Right, one final thing to say, even though it's a little bit negative, in my personal decisions, even though the battles were challenging and amazing, the story in the second act and the ending act seemed a little rushed in the pacing. Either that or I just played the game way too fast, but regardless, I think the build-up from the first act to the second act was phenomenal, and the twist was like perfect. The falling actions between the second act and the ending were a little less phenomenal, but it was still a great like tie to everything with a nice bow and a cathartic ending. Also, the original Switch struggles to run this game when a lot is going on. It's not enough to take me away from the game, but be aware that there are some frame drops in the busy parts of the game, like battles or like If you're trying to connect online while exploring the monastery while stuff is loading, it's gonna chug a little bit. But beyond that, I love the game. Alright, so we made it to the end of the review. So my final thoughts on Fire Emblem Three Houses are: there's an engaging story and the writing is great, near perfect character design and development, engaging gameplay on classic mode, there's replay value in New Game Plus, the branching story and the dialogue, recruiting and romance. The still shots are great at the pivotal moments in the game. The voice acting's pretty good. Teaching is surprisingly enjoyable, and the soundtrack is catchy. It's also lovely. But my negatives include that there's somewhat of a lackluster animation quality in some of the cutscenes. Seminars and resting are very underwhelming for your days off, and the final act felt rushed in the pacing, but it could have been just me too, I don't know. So there's minor performance issues on the original Switch. I'm assuming they're coming out with a new Switch, maybe then the game will run a little bit better, but we just have to wait and see at this point. At the end of this review, I want to give this game a very solid 9 out of 10. Like, those little negatives are taking very little away from the game. Overall, I loved this game. I would play it 6 times over if it wasn't so long. It's about 50-ish hours to finish it, but I think everyone needs to play this game. Pick up a Switch if you got to, bro. Like, I think this game is just that good to the point where it could be like a system seller. And if they make a sequel and the DLC is coming out, I think like April of 2020, I'm buying that on the spot. But yeah, I just want to say this is my first video I've ever edited together, recorded, and posted online. I just want to say if you watched all the way to this point, I want to say thank you for watching this video, and subscribe for similar content. I'm not exactly sure if I want to do a ton of reviews like this, but I definitely want to get more gaming content up there. I might do vlogs. I'm up for anything. Just be on the lookout. I got my Twitch. It'll be shown at the end of this video. Be twitch.tv/moonsoutTV, all one singular word. I'll get a Twitter sometime down the line. But yeah, I mean, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, that's where you're gonna find me. And thanks for watching the video, guys. Peace.